Now, what can you do right now? I want to switch over to what can you take if you are already doing all the above or not, but you still have inflammation. What can you do? So I'm going to talk about, what I have, my specialty is looking at natural anti-inflammatories, as you know. So aside from putting people on anti-inflammatory diet and checking all the things I mentioned before, like food sensitivities and going through the 10 epigenetic steps and the 10 definitive steps of preventing and reversing disease, I want to talk about specifically lowering inflammation with targeted natural therapies. So first I want to talk about is our flagship, which we've used now for more than a decade. Actually, we're the first people in the market to bring out this product over 12 years ago, actually, which is the combination formula of the strongest, what we consider natural anti-inflammatories that are available. It's patented. We have the most researched form of curcumin. Now, I'll go into a little bit of detail because everybody thinks that they understand curcumin. Everybody talks about curcumin and turmeric very interchangeably. It's incorrect. Curcumin is this 3 to 5% of the turmeric root, so you can't just use them interchangeably. A lot of studies will actually use them interchangeably, trying to say that's curcumin. They're actually talking about just the generic turmeric root. But we have the most efficacious form, which is 165 peer-reviewed, non-company funded studies. Right. So remember, there's a lot of people talking on these panels and this conference, like, oh, well, the drug industry is always influenced because it's paid by the sponsors, and that's true. But the supplement companies are just as bad. In fact, they're the only ones who sponsor it because they're the ones who have the product. Right. So when we look at the kind of forms that we're doing, we're talking about independent studies that are done by research hospitals, that are done by cancer hospitals, that are doing by scientific groups that are not paid for, or paid consultants of the companies. And that's how we can then look at getting stronger data. So we have 165, the most efficacious forms of all the 4 ingredients, okay, and plus more. And I'll show you one study that came out just more recently. Now, when we look at all the other major competitors, meaning patented other ingredient companies, they have about 25. Okay, I'm talking about, there's 5 other major companies, they have about 25. And most of them are white papers, and I'll explain what that is. All the other brands that you say, so 99%, 99.9% of products that you see on the market will not have any safety data or efficacy data. So when we look at something like this, I'm not going to say the names, but you can read them on the screen. These are all the big companies that you'll see that they're in the products that say, oh, faster, quicker, stronger. They all have very limited clinical data. At the end of the day, I'm evidence-based. Most of these companies have studies. Those studies are done in test tubes, okay? Not in an animal model, and more importantly, not in a human patient, right? They're lucky if they have a small pilot study, 10 people in most of these studies, 12 people, 15 people. And most of them are white papers. What a white paper? White papers are important, by the way, but white papers are what we consider more advertorial scientific articles, meaning the company will pay for a doctor who's usually on the company to write a paper that will describe the product. And it's important because it helps move understanding and education about that ingredient or the data. But it's a white paper, so usually it's not peer reviewed, and usually it's not published in a journal. It's usually just given out like a PR press release, right? So it's helpful for just getting the overall idea, but it's never truly verified, and it's not a clinical study or clinical trial, then going through that rigorous data of looking at how well it's working. So when we start seeing these claims now, 29, 45, 65, 128, 277 times more absorption. You'll see this of all these curcumin products and turmeric products now, is they're not measuring what they should be measuring. And higher absorption does not equal higher efficacy. When we actually analyze these products, and I'm going to be doing a whole video series on our podcast coming up soon. So go to sangevny.net, sign up for our newsletter. We'll let you know when it's coming out. I'm going to go through each product on the market, and because now I'm getting to a point where I'm getting tired of trying to explain this all the time. But then people can go like, this is the brand I'm taking. Is this good or not? And we'll say, this is the data it is. And a lot of people are not going to like what they hear because we've been sold a lot of misinformation. What they're measuring is what they call metabolites, and one of them is what they call gluconorides. And those gluconorides now have been shown in the animal model and clinically not to have anti-inflammatory effects. So when they have something that's 128, 277 times more absorbable of something that doesn't have anti-inflammatory effects, it's just 277 times or 65 times or 29 times more of nothing. But what happens is it makes the ability that they can actually make lesser curcuminoids in the product, sometimes not even the right ones, and then have a higher profit margin, and usually sometimes sell it to you at a higher price because people think, well, I'm getting a faster, stronger, better one. And in fact, it's not. So we really want to make sure that when people take something, they actually get the true benefits. Now, these are just some other aspects, so you can stop this, go back to this video, stop this slide right here. You might be having this right now on your counter or in your pantry, or even maybe, the doctor said, yeah, go ahead, that's fine, let's take this. These are all the brands that don't have any, and that's just the few. I mean, I didn't want to have like 50 slides of the brands, but these are the ones that if you went on to a generic online retailer like Amazon or Walmart, and you typed up, curcumin, or you typed up turmeric, or you typed up, Boswellia, it'll kind of come up, because these are all the ones that are trying to copy the formula and the concept that we delivered early in the market of the synergy of using curcumin, Boswellia, ginger, and black pepper. We were the first to do that, and we still are the first in terms of the leader of actually having safety, efficacy, and potency and purity. Now, the problems with generic turmeric supplements are the following. It's a big market. Like, it continues to grow, 157 million. Ground turmeric is one of the largest sources of lead exposure in the United States. Okay, why is that? Because when they grind the rhizomes of the turmeric, there's lead in the metal machine that grinds it. Because most of it's coming from China and other parts of India, mainly in China. So, you have to make sure, is it lead? Is it lead? Has it been tested for that? And again, most of them fail. And that's why we had this problem with patients having lead exposure. And then you'll see on the news, like, oh, supplements have lead exposure, don't take supplements. Well, there's a lot of products out there that are not tested for that. They're also not pesticide free, because remember, as a root product, any rhizome, ginger and turmeric and all, these are heavily sprayed. They're crops on the ground. Right? So if they're not pesticide free, you might be thinking, I'm taking this anti-inflammatory for my cancer or for my autoimmune, and then you're getting glyphosate or other types of herbicides and pesticides on it. Now, when we look at even like the top seller of one of the online retailers, we looked at them last month again, and their base cost, like, we can do all the backward calculations because we know how to do this. When you manufacture and you grow products and you have like 400,000 acres in 4 countries of turmeric that is controlled, vertically integrated, meaning we go directly from the farm to the facility to you. We don't have anybody touch anything in between. We actually know exactly, just like the oil company will know exactly how much per barrel of crude oil, how much your gasoline price will be. Right now, the most selling product right now is less than $4 total, meaning 100 capsules of over 1,000 milligrams in each capsule of multiple ingredients with the label in the bottle. That's not possible. Okay, it's not possible to be actually real. And in fact, even if I were to get product from China and India, would try to throw away. I mean, there's companies that contact us every day saying, hey, we can give you this bulk supply, super, super cheap. You still can't get it that cheap. So how do they get it that cheap? One of the ways is being synthetic. So the 43% of the largest supplier to the United States was recently found in a court case, because they were being sued, that they were selling synthetic curcumin. So almost across the board now. Now, again, most companies that sell turmeric just generically online don't even know this, because they're just looking at, hey, they're giving me a good deal. This manufacturer is cheaper than that. But when we look at now there was a study that came out. This was a university study, independent again. And they were looking at anti-inflammatory effects. I had a conference where I met a research scientist, and I made this comment. I said, well, we use the top form. It's the most studied. And he's like, well, I don't trust anything until we actually look at a clinical study from ourselves. I said, fine. So I told him, here's the ingredient. You can always, get it from the company. And they went to the University of Kentucky, did a study. They actually did it in the cell culture and in the animal. They took 5 of the top suppliers. Remember, what a lot of people don't understand about the nutraceutical and the vitamin, mineral, and dietary supplement industry, it's those major base suppliers, right? So there's top 5 suppliers, aside of ours who makes the curcumin C3 complex. There's top 5 suppliers that sell the generic product of 95% curcuminoids to every single company. Right. So if you went to Whole Foods, you went to Walmart, you went to online retailer, you go to Vitamin Shop and all, there's only going to be like 5 major suppliers that sell, and it'll be of hundreds of brands, right? Because they sell it to someone sells it, and then there's a small local shop, and they go, this is in my state, they make supplements. I look for curcumin, they have it on supply, they make it. The 5 top suppliers, when we look at it in cell culture in an animal study, looking at, does it have anti-inflammatory effects and immunological benefits? And guess what? They don't. Most of them, so out of the 5 top suppliers, the only one that was shown to have clinical effect on lowering all aspects. Now, some of them had a little bit here, a little bit there, because remember, having a little bit is still going to give you benefit than none, obviously. But when we compare about like all the biomarkers of inflammation going down and all the immune markers getting stronger, the form that we use in Boswellia was the only one that passes. Again, the reason why we're so specific on what we give and how and why our patients who use it and patients who've used it worldwide have had wonderful benefits. Now, what you want to be careful of is the newer forms. These are commonly trendy things like turmeric oils. Well, now there's multiple studies have been published. In fact, over like 8 or 9, 10 years ago. So this is like old data, right? They were showing already that turmeric oils cause problems. Okay, it's actually pro-inflammatory. It'll actually cause damage. Some parts of plants, when we hyper-extract them, can be beneficial, and some parts of plants, when you hyper-extract them and concentrate them, cannot be beneficial, and that's why nature's kind of kept them in a certain way. So it's kind of like giving superheroes, a person superpowers. Sometimes you can turn someone into a superhero, and that's really good, and sometimes we can turn someone into a super villain. And even though we thought the idea was right, you can get a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The idea would be like, okay, this person's becoming good, and then you have the split of the Marvel universe, and you have something that's quite bad or an evil character. So turmeric oils is actually a problem, but right now a lot of companies will say, well, we have turmeric oils, making it sound like it's something better or new, and in fact, the data will actually show clinically, and in the data will show that there is really caution to be taken. And more importantly, this really high trend of nanoparticles. Everybody wants to nanoparticle everything. Not everything is supposed to be made into nanoparticles, because that's when the safety and efficacy is very, very challenging. There is no data on nanoparticles in general, but some of the data on nanoparticles with curcumin have shown actually toxic effects. And that's why most of the nanoparticles right now that are being sold are not being sold by major suppliers. They're sold by minor suppliers online, direct to consumer, because of that liability risk. And so you have to be really careful when someone says nanoparticles, because safety data is far from little, and of what we have, it's actually more dangerous than anything else that we've seen, particularly when they even give these things IV form. We have to be very careful. So when we look at Boswellia, okay, it's a bilayered tablet. And I'll explain now, all of the products are usually put in a capsule or just a regular tablet. We have it in a bilayered sustained release. And I'll explain why that's so important, because it's all about understanding pharmacology and manufacturing. I mean, this is what I've been doing for 22 years. So a lot of people are like, oh, and right now you can go on Facebook or Instagram, and literally you'll see an ad and it'll say like, hey, you can sell your own supplements, just sign up here, a minimum bottle of 12, and you put your name on it. And so everybody's a social media influencer selling products. There's a difference of actually understanding how that product is made, how it's produced, and actually following clinically patients over years of, are you getting the response, rather than being a social media influencer. When we have this bilayered effect, the reason is the following. When you put any of the ingredients together in a capsule, so if you put Boswellia, which is frankincense, okay, we have what they call Boswellia PS, which is the patented form of the 3 different types of Boswellia. You put curcumin, C3 complex, or you put any type of generic curcumin or turmeric or branded product of curcumin, and then you add ginger of any kind, you add bromelain of any kind, papain, ceratopeptidase, any kind of proteolytic enzyme, nattokinase. Those, when they're in the capsule and when they sit in the tablet, actually degrade the other ingredients enzymatically as it sits in the capsule. So the potency of that tablet and that capsule will decrease over time as it's sitting on the shelf. Now, remember, they make it in a factory. It takes some time for them to ship it out. Then it goes to the warehouse, and then it goes to all the grocery markets, and then you finally go pick it up. And then by the time, it's been 3-6 months before you can get it, sometimes up to a year. It's still not expired, but the potency, meaning how well it actually works, is decreasing over time as it sits on the shelf. Well, we've ensured that your potency is 100% at the time you take it, when you take. And that's the difference of getting a clinical efficacious product, rather than I take something, I kind of get results. We want to actually get direct results. So we have a bilayered. So half the tablet is going to be, has the Boswellia PS. Now my book and the other videos will go into all the different aspects of Boswellia, because a lot of people will just use like essential oils and misinformation of understanding what data is applied for where. But we have this PS formula. We're the only person who has the polysol. That's the 3rd fraction. There's boswellic acids that people know. There's AKBBA, which a lot of people may know. But now we have the polysol. The polysol makes it water soluble, and it also makes it work within 20 minutes. So when people take our product, within 20 minutes, their inflammation is lowering. So if you have a migraine headache, you have a back pain, you have any kind of, you need immediate relief. That's why most people went to pharmaceutical drugs, right? Because when they go to pharmaceutical drugs, I can take a fast tab, I can take a ibuprofen fast tab, a Tylenol fast tab, and they get that immediate, oh my God, my migraine headache's feeling better, or my joint pain's feeling better, my back pain's feeling better. And natural therapies kind of failed because it would take time usually to kick in. And sometimes it takes several days or several weeks with natural therapies. Here we want people to get that almost instant benefit when they feel like, wow, that's just like my fast tab, without the side effects, without the black box warnings that you get with normal non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen or Motrin or Advil or naproxen. We add the gingerols at the highest percent, 20%, and the bioprine, which I'll talk about in a minute, which helps improve its absorption 60%, and it's also anti-inflammatory. Okay, the curcumin, we have all the 3 different type of curcuminoids at this specific ratio. My book will cover it. All the other videos will cover it, so I won't go into detail now. And again, so it's a bilayered sustained release tablet. Now, what makes this very interesting is that when you actually look at so this is the gold standard data. When you actually use the right form of curcumin, this is how much it raises in the blood. Remember, it's a food particle. It's not supposed to be like super, super high. Now, when they use the bioprine, it actually will go up and come down nicely. Okay, so it has this kind of peak. So that's why it improved the absorption 2,000% in the studies. Now, bioprine, not just black pepper. Generic black pepper does not do the same because the bioprine was patented on how they actually extracted the piperine compounds, not just the total amount. So again, a lot of people use 95% curcuminoids or piperine standardized. It's not the same because what the patent was looking at is how those things were extracted and what ratios that they were. Now, what we were able to do is with Bosmeric is that we looked at what else can we do to make this peak not only just go up and go down, but how do we make it sustained release? So by adding the Boswellia and PS, you have this 20-minute onset. So if you just took normal curcumin, it takes about an hour if you get the right form, right? With the black pepper, with the bioprine. Right. But now we have this 20-minute onset of action, and then we sustain release it. So instead of just having this peak and trough, we now have this long lasting, fast acting, we call it long lasting SR sustained release. So the issue is that when a lot of people have cancer, a lot of people see social media influencers and say, oh, well, I saw a study. It said that the C3 complex plus bioprine, I got to take grams and grams and grams a day for my cancer, or grams and grams and grams a day for my autoimmune or my flares. The problem is they're just doing this up and down, up and down. That's, at that time, that's what that was still giving them wonderful benefits. But can we give the right amount without overloading the system, making it more cost effective and more physiologically beneficial to keep them in that targeted range? And we can. Now, I'm not going to go too much into this, but real quick, showing you just differences of what curcumin does. Like all the herbs, like all the foods, by the way, they upregulate and downregulate. So it's not a suppressor only. It's just not turning off something like a lot of people think, well, it's like a natural ibuprofen. It's one molecule that has multiple effects. So we're talking about over 100 mechanisms. My book will cover this in general, but there's mono-targeted. So if someone takes a Celebrex, or someone was taking Herceptin or Avastin or Plaxitaxel for their chemotherapy, curcumin works on that same pathway, but it also does dozens of inflammatory cytokines and enzymes and receptors and protein kinds. So there's hundreds and hundreds of things that it's turning on singly and also kind of generally, right? So it's not just a suppressor, it's not just turning off things. And so again, my book will cover this, but just to show you, like, there's a variety of aspects of how it interacts with your immune system and cellular function. It's not just only for pain. It's about modifying inflammation and immune system function for the benefit of turning on genes that are anti-cancer and then turning off other things that are pro-inflammatory and are damaging. Okay, so a variety of aspects. I won't go into it in detail because I have other lectures that have done that, but just showing you, like, even like the beta amyloid in the brain that causes Alzheimer's disease and all. How do we affect that? How do we look at metals and other inflammatory molecules? So there's a variety of that. These natural things. That's why we want people to move to a phytonutrient rich diet, right? Plant diet, because these things only come from plants. You're never going to get any of these phytonutrients from an animal protein. Now, Boswellia, the second ingredient, real quick, is, again, a lot of people know about boswellic acids, okay? But higher numbers doesn't mean that it's more effective. So what we did actually is it took us 6 years in the development, because what we were able to do is look at each of these Boswellia components. And I actually was telling them, because from pharmacology and from kind of Western science, we think more is better. So we would actually increase the amount to almost 100%. Here's more AKBBA. Here's more boswellic acids. And we push that ratio higher and higher. But when we would do the animal studies measuring the inflammatory response in the animal models, guess what? It didn't show the benefit. So we had to keep working up and down with each of the ratios to find what was nature providing that has that bam, that effect that lowers it down very quickly. And we were able to find it. And by the way, it's not all 90%. You'll see AKBBA 90%, 90%. Actually, that doesn't have more anti-inflammatory effects. We were just thinking that a lot of people said, well, there's 90%, it must be more. You have to actually have to do the studies to find out what is that magic number that actually has the better benefit. Now, a lot of people also will look at this essential oils and multi-level marketing companies talking about essential oils in Boswellia, frankincense, frankincense, frankincense. In fact, when I did my lectures many, many years ago on a couple of videos, unfortunately, the market exploded because I talked about the Magi, I talked about Boswellia and frankincense, and the Magi brought to Jesus these aspects. And then a lot of companies made like now up to like $3 to $5 billion selling essential oils. But the idea is that when we actually look at one of the largest suppliers in the United States of essential oils, it costs less than 50 cents a bottle, meaning ingredient, bottle, and label, and they're selling it for $50 to $95 a bottle. It's not real Boswellia, or it's adulterated or synthetic. And that's what now some of the independent reviews and studies will show. So you have to be careful when people are trying to say like, well, this is an essential oil. Essential oil has a benefit, but it's a different type of benefit than what we actually get in the polysol and the boswellic acids, AKBBA. There's a different aspect. So a lot of people will use a study that's based on one part of the plant and apply it to a different part of the plant in a different product. Two different aspects. So you can't apply apples to oranges. Now, it doesn't mean that the essential oil can't be used in a diffuser, can't help calm the mind, which it does. But when everybody's like, I'm drinking essential oils to help with my inflammatory response, I would not recommend anybody doing that. Now, again, I won't go into this in detail, but the 3 parts are in our product. It has a 20-minute onset of action. There's more preclinical and clinical studies with more safety data than any other Boswellia extract. It has been generally recognized as safe. So we actually have GRAS status, which again, most supplement companies do not have GRAS status on their ingredients. Ours are always applied through and approved because of the clinical data. Ginger, again, make sure that they don't have pesticides and herbicides. Make sure, one thing that with all our herbs is that we don't irradiate them. So just one thing is after 9/11, Bioterrorism Act that was passed, anything that comes through the United States, plant, vegetable, animal, grain, legume kind of thing like that, it is irradiated because they want to make sure it didn't have any kind of bioterrorism ingredients like anthrax. The problem is that nothing is calibrated individually. So everything goes to the same machines and it's kind of sterilizes. So there is not bacteria on there, which is good, but also affects the bioavailability, the bioenergetic capacity of plants. That's why we don't like to microwave food, for example. So the problem is now that most things that are coming from the store that, most of these herbs are grown outside the country, by the way. That's just where they grow them. So they can still be organic, but if it's not irradiated, then it's actually going to have a lower effect. Now, I would still have an organic, irradiated food than a not. But the idea is that you want to have the physiological benefits. Then that's why when people say, how come your product is a little bit more expensive? We have to go through all these safety measures through the customs, through the government to look at, like, we have to test and prove 10 different ways why we don't have to irradiate it, but then why we still have no heavy metals, no pesticides, no solvents, no other molds and contaminants and everything more than any other company. You go on Amazon right now, you go to any retailer right now, you're buying something, it's really a wild west. And we start seeing now more and more problems with toxicity. I just had a patient the other day, she had a reaction and her doctor said, stop taking your supplements, they probably have contaminants. She stopped and she started feeling better. And I'm like, well, it wasn't that her ideas were wrong. Her ideas were actually correct, but the products that she was taking was off mark. They're not tested for potency, purity, safety, and efficacy. And we want to raise this industry to be better, right? We don't want everything to be drugs, but we have to kind of be in the same market to play on the same field. We have to be able to prove what we're saying, and we have to stand on the science and of safety saying, well, this is safe. Otherwise, right now, we're getting heavily regulated where this industry is going to slowly be pushed away. So make sure, again, like anytime someone puts ginger in a capsule, it will degrade the other ingredients over time and lower the effectiveness. That's why we have this bi-layered sustained release. Again, non-irradiated, no pesticides. And ours is the highest amount of gingerols, 20% in the market. And then lastly, black pepper. Black pepper, again, a lot of people would say generic black pepper powder. It's not standardized for 95% pepperine compounds in that specific way. it won't have the same physiological effect, even though it sounds the same. And again, irradiated, pesticide-free, that's what you want to look at. Black pepper does not cause health problems. So there's this huge myth that's been propagated by companies on the internet. It's usually companies who don't want to use piperine in their products, other generic turmeric companies, curcumin companies. So what they want to do is they want to say there's this faster, better, quicker, and then by trying to make this myth that black pepper is dangerous, then they can actually increase their profit margins because there's one less ingredient that they have to put in. And again, since they're measuring metabolites, no one's ever caring about whether it works or not. We do. And so the thing is, to let you know that almost every single table around the world has salt and pepper on it. Almost every food product that you'll get that's in a package will usually have a little bit of pepper in there. Pepper is not damaging or dangerous. What it actually is a bioavailable enhancer, which helps absorb your ingredients. That's why we put pepper in food. It's also anti-inflammatory by itself. We have all the studies and everything in our book, an NF-kappa beta blocker as well. So it is something that is, we've been using for thousands of years, and all of a sudden there's some, naturopath or some company saying like, well, there could be a problem and it can cause some problems in your gut and all. No, that's just all myths. Again, those are people who don't understand the science, or just they're trying to be competitive and find a different way of not trying to knock something that they can't attain. It does increase the bioavailability when you're using the right form, bioprene, 30% up to 2,000%. So depending on which ingredient, like a CoQ10, all the way up to the curcumin. Again, certified pesticide-free, non-irradiated, and GRAS status. So our product, again, these are the ingredients. Here's our product, Bosmeric SR. You can go to bosmeric.com, or you can go to sanjevnistore.com, or look at our link. Here's kind of how it's going to look like. And again, how we got these ratios was by testing. It wasn't just like, oh, we just put it together. Most people will just like, oh, I want to sell a curcumin extract on online, and they'll just go grab something. That's not how it works. Now, the benefit of why we have all of these, and so when you look at Ayurvedic medicine, the traditional medicine of India, you look at Chinese medicine, you look at any indigenous medicine now, what we're missing in conventional medicine right now is everything is like a mono target, right? Like this is one ingredient, here's your magic bullet. And now we understand when we look at all these indigenous and traditional medicines, it's about formula. It's about some things. What we're trying to do is prevent you from building a tolerance. We're trying to prevent also sometimes a potential side effect if you use something too long. And by balancing the formulas, that's the herbal medicine part that most nutraceutical companies, most naturopaths, most holistic doctors or functional practitioners don't have any experience in doing. So they're like, oh, let me just put this one thing in here, put it on high dose, and blast my patients. And then in the beginning, it might have some benefit, and over time, it will lose its efficacy. So we have to understand, like, we can now put things together, and it can have a long-term benefit without burning out or causing side effects. So there's something called synergy. 1 + 1 = 3. And so those people who understand formulations of herbal medicine and the pharmacology behind that, that's something that we can do. Again, synthetic free, nanoparticle free, non-irradiated, and we're all, at the highest GMP standards. In fact, the facility that manufactures is audited twice a year because we supply products to clinical trials that are done in hospitals in phased studies, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 clinical studies. Because now the biggest research with these ingredients is how these things work synergistically with certain type of medications like chemotherapy. How can we make a chemotherapy more effective and less toxic? How can we make radiation more effective, less toxic? My book will cover that in detail with some of the examples of what the studies have shown and which medications they have been shown to become beneficial. Lastly, I want to just finish on a couple of things. I just had someone send this to me last week, so I just want to pull it up. Again, a lot of people are sending me things all the time. Deceptive marketing from corporations. So I gave a lecture. I was on, I think, the YouTube about a month ago. And so someone sent this to me because they were looking at Bosmeric on Google, and this came up. It says Bosmeric SR. Hey, this is my registered trademark. But guess what? This is a different company. And they're selling this other generic, which I showed you before, right? That's from the test tubes and all stuff like that. Like that's their ingredient. So this is how, the sneakiness of large corporations is that they can use these tactics, right? Like you have a product that's good and they're trying to steal customers or steal my patients, for example, in getting. So if someone will go here, their website's going to be 10 times fancier, bigger. They have a multi-million-dollar budget and folks. And then they'll probably forget that, oh, I was looking for a Bosmeric, and then this said this is faster. This is maybe 50 times better or absorbed. So they might forget all the reason why I'm talking about this in the lecture because they get taken down the rabbit hole. One thing I'll just let you know that for Amazon right now, Amazon has restrictions on claims. And so they will tell us, for example, if you make a claim, you have to show the reference for that claim. So when I say this is faster or better or quicker, here's the study. Here's the independent thing. And they keep on coming back because what happens is, like, even if I say, hey, there's a study here showing 43% of the turmeric on the market is synthetic, they won't allow me to put that on my listing. Why is that? It's because they make 25%, 30% on every turmeric product on the market, which is hundreds of them, which is making millions of dollars of profit for them. So they're trying to prohibit, we think of online being this great marketplace, but there's actually stifling of growth of actually good product, because more of everything is just more profit for one company, but it's not getting the access to the patient. So if I go to some of these bigger websites, they can make all the claims they want. Why don't they go after them for not? I look at them, they don't have a reference, they don't have any kind of backup of their information. They actually can make false charts where I can pull out a whole lecture of just false graphs all day long. But why don't they touch them is because they have over 100 products on Amazon, and taking 25% profit of all those 100 products is more profitable for Amazon. So Amazon doesn't touch the big guys, but I'd like to come out against the small guys. But I'm always in for the good fight, and we've been here for a long time. And so we always stand on our patients' outcomes, and we always stand on the data that we've been able to provide. So make sure that I always tell people, if you shop, try to shop directly to a small business. We're a small business, but any kind of products, try to shop locally. Try to shop as much as you can to help local rather than the large online retailers. We are in the large online retailers, but we prefer people actually shop directly from us. Now, lastly, I want to finish. I know we have a few minutes. We have some questions, but I spoke on the last conference last year on COVID, and we talked about, there was about 10 or 12 research studies that were done, peer-reviewed, multi-center studies looking at curcumin, the kind that we're using in our Boswellia, and different pathways of lowering inflammation for COVID. Not a replacement for vaccines, okay? So don't get me wrong. Don't hear me wrong. Don't say I can just take this, not take a vaccine. Not that saying that, but I'm saying, what can we do to help lower the risk of inflammation when we get the virus, or if we have exposure or near the virus and we have that, how do we lower the complications? And to share with everybody, there was a wonderful double-blinded randomized controlled clinical trial. This is the gold standard, clinicaltrials.gov. You can go find this up there. Okay, it's the gold standard. This is what we do with the pharmaceutical. This is the one that we want to see. Double. Because a lot of people say, "Well, that was a small study." Okay, that was this. This is a double-blinded randomized controlled clinical trial. They were using the C3 complex and the bioprene. That's the forms that we only use in our Boswellia. Okay, and it found that it had early recovery, less deterioration, fewer red flag signs, better oxygen saturation, better clinical outcomes than the control group. That was, the randomized one that got a sugar pill. The doctors didn't know, the patients didn't know. And the conclusion was there was an adjuvant symptomatic therapy in COVID-19 treatment that could substantially reduce morbidity and mortality and ease the logistical and supply-related burden on the healthcare system. Safe and natural therapeutic option to prevent post-COVID blood clotting events. So these are things like, on top of eating a plant-based diet showed 79% lower reduction in inflammatory responses for those people who got COVID. So going plant-based, being less stressed, taking your Boswellia, taking your vitamin D, hydrating very well. We all are going to get the virus sometime, now or another variant in the future. The idea is that who's going to be a long hauler or who's going to actually have to go to the hospital, that depends on how much inflammation is already stacking. So we're going to definitely want to try to reduce the stacking effects of inflammation. Again, eating a whole food plant-based diet, try to eat as much organic as possible, particularly if you're eating any of the top 12, most sprayed foods, that's where you get your biggest bang for your buck of eating organic. Avoiding animal proteins and saturated fats, avoiding added sugars and salt. Again, many other lectures I've given on that. Test for your food sensitivities, both IgE and IgGs. Look for other things like microbiome, that's what we look at, like SIBO or microbiome testing or nutritional and toxin levels. We look at everything, by the way, because it's not just one thing. Remember, it's the stacking effect of multiple dysfunctions. Try to clean up your environment. Try to eat more green, try to eat more clean, try to use more clean products on your body and in your home, reduce your stress, do some more yoga, do more meditation and exercise, strengthen your immune system. I'll give other lectures on things that you can do, like Glucan 300 that we offer, that's been clinically shown stronger than any other mushroom extract or any other glucan market